Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dorothy here from CCMA. Welcome to you all on this Friday of a bank holiday weekend. So hopefully everybody looking forward to a nice relaxing break. Delighted this morning to welcome Laura and Nelson from Sun Life Financial, who are going to talk about intelligent swarming. And this was a concept I knew nothing about until I visited Sun Life maybe a year and a half ago, I think, Laura, and a presentation was made on it, and I was just absolutely bowled over about the process, but also the impact it's had on employee engagement and customer satisfaction, which Laura and Nelson are going to talk about this morning. And since then, I know several member companies have engaged with the guys in Sun Life, but also have talked to me and have mentioned that they are hoping to implement similar processes. And with the impact of COVID, it's probably a good time for companies to be looking at this type of process or activity in terms of enhancing customer experience and also supporting employees working remotely. So again, I know Laura and Nelson are going to talk about the challenges around that particularly. So as usual, thanks to Niamh, she's on screen there, for being on board, helping us this morning. We will record this webinar. We'll also are keen to get as many questions as possible. It is called Ask the Expert, so this is your time to shine and ask whatever questions you have while we have the two experts here with us this morning. So please feel free to do that. You'll see there's a little box over to the right hand side for anybody who hasn't been on a webinar with us before, and I'll put them to Laura and Nelson as they come in, and I know they're also happy to take questions at the end as well. So I'm going to hand over to Laura. Laura and Nelson, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time this morning, and look forward to the presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Dorothy. So my name's Laura Ryan. I'm the Associate Director of the Service Desk. So I'm here to talk about intelligent swarming this morning with my colleague Nelson. So we're actually going to kick off with a poll and ask how or what people know about intelligent swarming and if you're planning to implement it.
The poll should be live there now. People want to start getting their answers in. Great, might give it another 15 seconds or so, guys. Okay, just gonna close it here now. I think we've got a clear trend for you, Laura. So we have 50% yes and 50% no plans to implement. So are there pretty strong answers on both sides there?
Okay, great. So that's good to know, and maybe we might convince a few people today to change their mind. So yeah, we'll kick off on what is intelligent swarming. So intelligent swarming brings the knowledge and the expertise to the point of the contact instead of escalating through time-consuming layers of tiered support. So this puts our client at the heart of the interaction and keeps them there with where the knowledge is and the experience is and towards the service desk agent. So I suppose what I'm trying to convey here is that the most important people in intelligent swarming are the agents and also the client. So I suppose what were our objectives? We wanted to develop our employee skills. We wanted to optimize people's ability to contribute earlier in the life cycle of the incident. We wanted to engage loyalty from our clients and from our employees. And also we wanted to improve client productivity and improve problem solving. So we were going to do this by our reach, our relevance, and our diversity. And I suppose one of the taglines we came up with is that every interaction is an opportunity to improve the relevance of the next interaction. So how did we get started? So we identified a collaborative group involving team members and designing the support model. So what does that mean for the Sun Life Service Desk? So we got our agents involved and we got the TSS support team, which Nelson works on, involved from day one. So we set up our staff profiles, who is best to help with each issue. We created a robust knowledge process to capture and maintain knowledge going through swarming. So I suppose this is probably the most important point in this slide. Creating the robust knowledge process was probably the most important thing we've done with this. you know, the more knowledge that we put at the service desk, that means we're reducing tickets that are going to the tiered support teams. We're freeing them up to do actual, you know, value work.
There's also, just to chime in there, something we're trialing out at the moment is the KCS, so the knowledge centric service. So what can happen now is we can create solutions on the fly. So before we would have to email the knowledge team and back and forth. Now we're able to just go in live when we're working on the issue and submit a solution. So when the next person calls into the service desk with the same issue, it's live, ready to take.
Thank you. And then I suppose the next thing is, how are we going to get the best person to the case on the first touch? So I suppose in the TSS team, we have specialists who look after certain applications that they're more familiar with. And, you know, with that intelligence swarming, we're able to increase the knowledge of the service desk agents around the applications that they're most familiar with. Request help. When someone needs help, how do we find the best person to help them? And when offer help, how do we allow people who can and are willing to help actually help us? So what's different about swarming? So the support organizations function as a single team of people with various skills who can collaborate on resolving issues. The person who takes the case owns it until it's resolved. So I suppose this eliminates queue bouncing, improves learning, and transfers the skills. So the queue bouncing was something that was identified to us within the TSS team. So a lot of their job was actually phone tagging. So they would actually be ringing back lines, you know, not getting them and then having to call again. And that was quite frustrating for the team.
Whereas now, like, we can just have that instant connection with the client while they're on the phone, and we rule out all the phone tagging. You know, we don't have to set up calendar invites. It's all just pretty instant.
Yeah, one of the benefits is that we've actually reduced our ticket time from around 24 hours. That's how long it used to get to get to the client and get it resolved. Whereas now we've reduced that to about 15 to 30 minutes with using our intelligence swarming. So the first person to work on the ticket should be able to provide the tools an opportunity to resolve the issue. Our service desk agents can collaborate with the best person to help, and our service desk agents can see work that's relevant to them. So some of the feedback from our initial pilot group was that they actually learned so much from the TSS team and from in the pods. So that was fantastic. We also actually, when we did the pilot, we took some very brand new agents. So they, you know, weren't proficient, and we actually realized that they upskilled faster than previous agents had with this experience. Okay, so some of the benefits. Increase first call resolution. So FCR is one of our key metrics at Service Desk. This year in 2020, I actually increased the FCR target to 85%. But you can see here from the graph, we've actually hit 87 for the whole of 2020. So we do put that increase down to intelligence swarming. We're increasing the knowledge of our agents. We're getting more calls resolved for the client at the first contact. So that's been a huge benefit for us. Obviously, the knowledge sharing between the teams. So TSS and the service desk were always one team, but we've actually brought that closer together, and we're able to share more knowledge, create more knowledge documentation like we talked about, and in turn just improving the experience for the agents and for our clients. So our NPS. So our NPS is also another one of our big key metrics that we report on. So as you can see from the graph below for 2020, our NPS has really increased. So in March, we had an all-time high. So we actually hit 87% for our NPS for March. And then you can see for the last couple of months, it's been trending around 86 to 84 to 80, back up to 86. So I suppose that again is to do with the intelligence swarming. We've seen some comments back in our survey saying, you know, it's fantastic, you know, that it got resolved so quickly, it's great service and stuff like that. And I think, Nelson, you have some feedback from a client this week, yeah?
Yeah, I noticed it in one of the chats, and I just took a print screen. I can't share it, but I'll just read it out. But Steve and Alan were collaborating with a client. They did a phone conference, and at the end of it, the client sent a message back to Alan on the service desk, and she just said, "Amazing, thanks so much, Alan. This is one of the best IT support that I received over the past years." So it's kind of nice to see a client even just respond back in, on our chat system, just to say something like that. It shows like how well it's working.
Yeah, it's great. And also we've increased our employee engagement. So, at the start we had a few agents who were involved in the pilot group, and, it always kind of intrigues other people and they want to start getting involved in it. And we really have seen a huge uptake in it. And, the agents are who have made it easy for us to expand this intelligence swarming at the service desk.
Laura, can I come in with a question there? So one of the questions that's come in is how does it, from a technology point of view, work? So my understanding, if I'm right, is that previously somebody would ring into the contact center with a technical support query. The first line agent may not have had the skills or the understanding or the knowledge to answer that. So they'd raise a ticket, which would then go into the system, would go to your, I think you're calling it TSS, TTS, yes.
TSS, yep.
Yeah, but now what happens is the query comes in and the first line agent is able to, in the moment of the query, bring on that resource onto the call physically, is it?
Yeah, so we actually have a couple of screen grabs further along in the presentation where we can show, but we've created what we call pods. So our pods are using Workplace by Facebook. So they're basically group chats, but we've decided to call them pods. So in the pod is maybe up to 8 to 10 agents, and then Nelson would be the technician for that pod. So that they would reach out in real time and say, "Hi Nelson, I'm having an issue with somebody accessing Sharepoint. Can you help?" And then we have a couple of options on how that they can engage. So Nelson, do you want to talk about how TSS engage with the agents then?
Yeah, so I guess for us, we have 4 pods and 1 technician per pod. And like Laura was saying, there's 8 to 10 agents in each pod. If when an agent gets a call from a client, and if they can't resolve it using knowledge base or the tools they have, they engage the pod, and they'll just say, "Hey, got this particular issue, can you help me out?" And then one of us, whoever's assigned to that pod, will respond. The 3 ways it works is either it could be just a simple chat reply going, "Did you," let's just say, "reboot," and that fixes it maybe. The other scenarios are we would remote in with different types of remote methods, or if it's a complicated issue, and we'll know, within a minute or two if it's very complicated, we then spin up a call. So we'll have a conference call with the client, the agent, and myself, and we'll do screen sharing and walk through the issue. Now, if it's a scenario where it needs much more investigation, then it will come back into our backlog. But most of the time, we're pretty good at resolving in the pods.
And then just so, again, to confirm, so then you update the knowledge base with that new information on the solution to that problem. So the next time round, the advisor should be able to access that knowledge and not have to engage you, or they'll have learned the understanding of the solution to that problem.
Yeah, there's 2 ways. If the knowledge base article is appropriate, it will go into the self-service and of course into service desk view. The client might actually go into the self-service and do a search, and they'll find it, and then they'll apply that fix, and then they don't even need to call the service desk. And we know the self-service is working fantastically. The other thing is if it's not available to them for whatever reason, there might be a more detailed type or intricate fix, they'll call in, and then the service desk will be able to check the knowledge base and then apply the fix for the client.
Okay, and one other question, that the duration of the pilot and how many people were involved?
So that started, oh, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just 2018. It was Steve on our team and 4 or 5 agents. It was a couple of months. It's about September to December.
And presumably that was to prove the business case, so that then you could do the full rollout when you saw the sort of results you were getting.
Yeah, it's to test it out, see if it works, and it was working. We were, you know, Steve was doing a fantastic job and reported back to us, and then into production.
Great, thank you.
So we were just talking about employee engagement there a minute ago, and that's where one of the biggest feedback from our agents came, was when they were actually on the calls with Nelson or with Steve that Nelson mentioned there. So what they learned even was how to call manage differently. They were asking kind of more technical questions or in-depth questions because they were listening to what the technicians were advice, you know, that they were giving on the call. So that was really beneficial as well. And that doesn't just, you know, solve that call. That means that they can use that expertise or that, you know, information that they learned on the next 10 calls.
Yeah.
So that's also been another really kind of key thing for us.
And one of the, sorry.
I was just going to come in with one more question from Niall. FTR, I presume first time resolution by one agent is the goal, but do they have any ideas how FTR can be implemented in a follow the sun model over multiple time zones and with teams that are also on the client side, hence independent of us as a BPO? And I know you guys follow the sun with your model, but you might want to answer that.
Yes, so the follow the sun model, we actually don't do it overnight. So the TSS team would finish in standard Eastern time at around 5 or 6 o'clock. And that's kind of when we would stop as well, which is around 9 or 10 o'clock here at night time. And then what we would do is if there's any tickets that come in overnight that, you know, can't be part of the pod because there's no one available, we would just add them to the queue like we would have done originally in the past.
And then you don't interact with a BPO. Everything you do for Sun Life is in-house.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
No problem. So earlier, yeah, we talked about the MTTR and how we've reduced it from 24 hours back to around 15 to 30 minutes. So that's been obviously a huge win for us, and more importantly, it's been a huge win for the clients. That's the one thing that they want when they call, is that they want their issue resolved as soon as possible. Fewer client escalations. Obviously, there's no adding to queues. You know, there's no delay in getting to the right person, so that has helped. And then quicker resolution times. So this is when did we launch? So I know we've kind of just briefly talked about that. So we piloted this in Q4 in 2018 with 4 service desk agents and 1 TSS technician. So that was Steve that Nelson has mentioned. So we rolled it out then as part of production in Q1 of 2019. So the pilot was maybe 3 months roughly. So we have 4 intelligent pods in place. So to explain what that means is kind of what we talked about earlier, that Nelson would be in one pod with maybe 8 to 10 agents. Then Steve, another member of that team, would be in a pod with another 8 to 10 agents. Having all of originally, Nelson, did we have all of the TSS team in the pods, and we decided that it was easier to manage with?
Yeah, well, that's it's kind of one of the feedback items is you know, 50 agents and 6 technicians in one chat pod was a bit crazy. Messages will be lost, you know. So, you know, it was one of the things we brought up in our retrospective and planned out, and we decided that we'd break it out into 4 pods and 1 technician assigned to each pod at the time. And we continue to keep that because it keeps it running a lot smoother, and people don't feel like their messages are getting, you know, unanswered. It worked out a lot better for us in that case. If you had a pod that was lower interaction, like lower engagements, then it probably makes more sense to have just 1 pod. But because of our team, we deal with an awful lot of technical issues from all areas, then it made more sense for us to streamline it that way.
How many questions do you think you get a day in a pod then, Nelson, just to give people kind of an understanding of how busy these are?
It depends. Like sometimes it can be quite enough. Other times you can get like 10 questions in the pod. It depends. What it kind of comes down to now is, or what we noticed was that if someone was on a night shift, you're going to have less questions, you know, or if someone's on the weekend shift, you'll have less questions in a particular pod, which we wouldn't have control over because we're just going you know, there's 10 here, 10 here, 10 here, and 10 agents here. But it's smoother for everyone because you can get back to everyone, and with less without that many engagements across in one single pod. When you have it broken out across 4 pods, you have more time to work with an agent than, you know, if 2 of them asked at the same time. More than likely now you'll have one agent will ask in pod 1, and if it was at the same time, it'll be a different agent in pod 2. So it kind of just works out nicely for us that way.
Great. So intelligent swarming and COVID-19. One of the benefits of the whole COVID-19 has been the growth of intelligent swarming. I know there's not many benefits to COVID-19, but this is a random one. So the service desk moved to work from home fully on 13th of March. So during the first week, the service desk received a huge amount of calls. We were actually broke records of 1,000 calls a day for the whole 5 days of that week. So we had to kind of think on our feet and use the kind of agile approach. And one of them was with the OSS team, our on-site support team. So a lot of people were obviously moving to work from home across Sun Life globally as well. So they actually had to roll out 600 laptops. So we were able to create a pod. And what we could do then was that the OSS team could actually ask questions within the pod if they needed people's passwords reset or anything like that. And I suppose the benefit of that was, you know, our wait times were a little bit high due to the increased volumes. So that way they were able to get the answers straight away and move on to fixing the laptops.
It was,
we were also,
I was just going to say, it was fantastic for the new hires, like starting in Sun Life. It was a big benefit.
Yeah, it's really beneficial to, you know, reduce the time to get back to get these people up and running. Especially, it was kind of a frantic time for everybody. So we also provided assistance to our colleagues in Bermuda as well. So we had another pod created for their soft phones. They all needed temporary admin access. So what we did there is put in a couple of our agents, a couple of technicians, and they were able to just ping in and say, hi, I need temp admin access, and it would be given. I suppose one of the things that we wanted to share with you today as well is that, like, we can pretty much have a pod created in about 30 minutes. These pods are just group chats, as we talked about earlier. So all we need to do is get a couple of agents who are happy to assist. We put in a couple of technicians, we name the pod, and it's as simple as that. We'll be able to show later kind of an example of it. So hopefully people will be able to see. One of the big ones that actually happened that first week that we moved to work from home was the contact centers, the Canadian contact center reached out to us and asked us, could we help their call center reps set up from work from home? So, you know, the most important thing for Sun Life is to make sure that our clients, external clients, can call us. And especially during this time, because, you know, Sun Life is an insurance company, so people are calling about their benefits and, you know, important stuff like that. So what we did is we were able to create a pod, and we put in a couple of their technicians, and we were able to put in 2 of our service desk agents, our strong service desk agents, and they were able to ask questions and get assistance again straight away. So that literally was set up in maybe half an hour. And I suppose the other thing to show is that, like, we can create them within half an hour, but then once, like, this project was closed, we can shut them back down again. So
it's all about it's all about kind of scaling up and down, kind of like Amazon Web Services. It's like when you need it, you get it, and then when it's finished, you can remove it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I won't read this out, but this is some feedback from one of the VPs at the call center, where he was very, very thankful for the work that we had done by, you know, kind of taking an impact to our own KPIs and making sure that the business was up and running, which is, again, like I said, the most important thing for us. So what do all these little round circles mean? So one of the main pods that we created then as well during this kind of the first week of COVID-19 and working from home back in March was the telephony pod. So as you can imagine, everyone moving to work from home, everyone needs to get their soft phone set up and loads and loads of queries. So our calls went from around, we used to get 18 calls a day on telephony, up to about 60 during March. We also, our soft phone requests increased by 570%. So that was really kind of important for us to kind of set up that telephony pod, and it was used a lot. I was meeting the agents, talking to them, and they said the telephony pod in particular was really, really beneficial to them. And I suppose that is one that we've kept going now. Like, it was fantastic that we got it set up so quickly, but it's also great now that it's business as usual. So the same with our access governance pod. This is the team that look after LAN requests, our Oracle requests, anything to do with people's passwords, accounts. So we're able to access them and get help straight away. So that also is another pod that is staying for the long term. So our SD Ops pod then is slightly different. It's not with another team, it's within our own service desk team. So when we were in the office, we would have always had experienced agents who would have been able to help people with queries and questions if they had anything, and they would have went over to them and over to their desk and asked them. But we obviously lost that now as we went to work from home, so we had to create our own pod. Now for the first few days we did do a Zoom where we had it open and people were able to access and go in and ask questions. But you know, further along now we've created our own pod for them so that they can ask questions to experienced data services agents that maybe they don't need TSS's help, or they know that that person's going to know. So then what we have pods in the yellow. So these are some that have actually been created in the last couple of weeks. They actually weren't created in March, but since then. So the Mac IS pod is to do with a new project. So we're going to be rolling out Macs in September. And because of that, then we're able to use this with the project team. So Nelson, I think you're part of that pod as well, are you?
Yeah, we're part of that. And I was just going to say, one of the really cool things about the new specialized pods, and it's starting to come about, is when the client calls in now and they have an issue, and let's say the agent comes to our pod, we're now able to direct them to another pod who will, let's say, are the expert in SharePoint or, you know, OneDrive, and now they can resolve it before the ticket doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just closed at service desk and it's not bouncing from our team to the SharePoint team. So it's a nice kind of way of directing the client's issue to the person who's best suited to fix it. With regard to that, the Mac pod, yeah, that's part of Chris' team. We're moving into some new software and Macs will be deployed, and we've doing a lot of training courses with Chris on that. Then I think the collaboration pod is Neil's team, so they deal with the SharePoint and OneDrive and workplace chat issues. And then the OSS pod was the last there to be created, and they were kind of working a bit with the password side during the COVID, but they've expanded now where agents can ask them questions basically around the request for admin side.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about some of the challenges that we had then?
Yeah, I suppose teleswarming has been, you know, a significant change in how we work, and I suppose, and it kind of feeds into changing in the second bullet of changing into working styles. Because one minute you're working in a queue and you might be doing this type of a job for a number of years, but then the next day you're in pods and you're answering questions. It's a different environment and it's something to get used to. But I think one of the things that worked well for us to adapt and change was we set up feedback loops, and we'll take a quick look at one of those in a moment. But also being in, like Laura was talking earlier about being involved in the process early, I think is absolutely critical, because you're able to create this, you know, new decisions can be made and discussions can happen. I suppose, like, just off the top of my head, there was when we moved into pods, it, you know, kind of got a bit messy. We needed to create a structure. One of the team came up with the idea of, let's create a rota and we'll move, you know, one technician per pod. and the fifth technician. So you'd have one technician per pod. There's 4 pods, and the fifth technician would cycle into the backlog. That actually changed again, and we were like, well, why don't we just rotate through the pods? So I'm in pod 1 this week, Steve's in pod 2, but the following week I'll be in pod 2, and that created a great rapport with agents, a knowledge share back and forth with us. It was, it was a really cool thing to see. And I guess another thing that came out of that too was the specialists. They, it's just started happening. They were stepping in and answering questions, and then we started looking at predetermined issues, and we did some training, and then, when the first question comes in, then and they think they know how to answer it, they take it and run with it, and some of that's been really fantastic. Looking at tool limitations, I guess it's kind of like it's a new way of working, so we may not have the right tools to do the job when it comes to that collaboration style of working, and I'll run through an example with the remote tool shortly. Agent expectations and handoffs need to be set early. So we wanted to make sure that, you need to check the KB before you engage the pod. And we have a robust KB. It's a fantastic system, so it needs to be used. I guess another thing was that, like, we didn't want agents waiting around too long if a technician couldn't respond. So let's say, for example, a technician has gone on break. You don't want the agent wait until they came back from break with the issue. Not that would happen, but it's just an example. So we kind of set a 3-minute wait time. If you don't get a response, proceed to open it, that sort of thing.
Sorry, Nelson and Laura, just pitching in. I'm conscious of time. We're gone a little bit over, so we've about 5 more minutes. So conscious, I know you have a couple of more slides to go through.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll go real quick.
Yeah, well, you don't need to fly through them at the same time, but I just want to be conscious of that.
So at the very start, well, I suppose a month in, we were, there was, it was a tough change. Like, there's no question. So we put in this feedback loop. So we'd have our agile retrospective, which would be, a meeting or ceremony we'd host bi-weekly, and it would be just questions around the team, and you would say what worked well, what didn't work well, what should we start, stop, and continue. One of the things that kind of populated or came up and was the remote tool. So it was very difficult. Like, if an agent was remote controlled to a client's computer, I would have to remote control the agent to see the client's computer screen. I couldn't remote control the client at the same time as the agent. So that was a limitation I was mentioning before. So now that caused its own problems. Like, there was a time where I'd made a change on an agent's machine instead of the client's machine. So it got messy. But that was one of the things that came up, and it kept being, kept coming up each time. So we brought that into our sprint review and plan, which is the 4th tile on the right here, where we'd review actions. Actually, we'd review items that were completed, and we'd come up with ideas and assign actions to people. So, for example, the remote tool was assigned to our manager, who then brought it into the leadership meeting. And what actually happened was we were able to move into using Zoom, but an enhanced version of Zoom. So it's pretty cool now. All I have to do is, if an agent engages the pod and I want to jump on the call with the agent and the client, I just pop in the email address of the client and the email address of the agent and hit invite. They get a little pop-up on both of their screens. They join, and we're connected, and we go from there. So it's always like looking at continuous improvement and things like pains and gains, and what can we do, and come up with ideas to make improvements. So that's one for in the feedback loop. The next slide is our intelligence forming SharePoint homepage. So we created this because we wanted a central point for all the information. Things can go in many different places, but we just wanted a central place. So the first promoted link or tile on the left is the OneNote. So this is where we do all our documentation and processes. We collaborate together. So at the moment, we're building a playbook. The next tile is our visual board. So any tasks that we want to do, we'll drop in here, and we'll get them done. Changelog is just simply a page that shows all the changes that have happened with IS since 2018. The next tile next to it is the pod diagram. So it shows processes and high-level view of the pods that are active or are onboarding. And just before we go to the dashboard, we do have a number of research articles. About 20, and about 5 or 6 are from like case studies. So if there's interest, I can share them with Dorothy at the end. So then we go on to our dashboard. We were running the dashboard through ServiceNow with tags, and it was, it was a little bit cumbersome in the way it was operating, and then the data had to come out into Excel. But this month we implemented a new change where when an agent engages a pod, they now can choose a drop-down which has the pod group in it. So if an agent gets a call on, let's say, Mac, they'll engage the Mac pod and they'll pick Mac in the list. So now that would instantly in real time appear on this board. So this is for anybody, executive level, pod leaders, managers, teams. They can just go to this one dashboard and they can go, okay. And this is real data now. This is from this month. We had taken yesterday. So we've 674 engagements this month. We resolved 400 across all pods. And then you can jump to the next tile and it shows, 307 engagements from our team to our team, and we resolved 159. And if it's, like the telephony team wants to have a quick look, they'll just see telephony. They had 75 engagements this month, and then to the right, they resolved 49. So it's a nice way to quickly view how intelligence swarming is working now. And I think this is going to be really nice in about, 6 months to see all the data populated cleanly and extremely accurately. It's much more efficient for agents to pick the drop down now. It's just 2 clicks. Before it was 3 clicks, and it was a little bit cumbersome. Any of the tabs to the right, they're simply just a breakdown of each team. So if you wanted to go in and look at your pod and see where are tickets going, maybe tickets are being assigned to other teams, etc. And you wanted to analyze them and create knowledge-based articles or discover trends, that sort of thing. So just real quickly, it's kind of just an example of how this works. Sarah is one of the agents, and she just messages into the pod saying anyone free. And then I'd reply with hi Sarah, do you have any print screens to the error that she's reporting? She says yes, one moment, drops it in. I ask a couple of questions. I give her advice on what to do next. And what happens is she follows the advice and it works. And then we create a knowledge-based article from this interaction. That's true. That's just chat back and forth. But the other scenario is if we jumped on the conference call, if it was a more complicated issue, and if whatever advice I gave her didn't work.
Cool, so we can skip that and just go straight to questions. And I know we're running out over time. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm conscious. No, and it was brilliant. Thank you so much. I just finish on if you want to leave up the future plans one, Laura, because I'm conscious I passed through any questions that we got. But I do know you're both more than willing and able to talk to anybody directly. So anybody on the call who's looking at this for the first time and wants more in-depth analysis or just advice and feedback from you guys, you're more than happy to do that. And I know John is on the call as well. So I know the team in Sun Life have been very good to other member companies in sharing your expertise. And I do think all of the work you've done previously in knowledge management too is a story in itself in terms of the developments you made in that space. So conscious we're gone a little bit over time, and I know it's a Friday and the rain has arrived in Kildare from Waterford, so thank you very much for that. So thanks a million. A copy of the presentation will be made available to members. We'll hopefully get the video of the webinar up. Normally it takes till Monday, and obviously Monday being the bank holiday, it'll probably be Tuesday. But Laura and Nelson, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I know everybody really enjoyed the webinar. So thanks again for that. And thanks, Niamh, as always. So have a lovely weekend.
See ya. Thanks.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thanks. Laura. Bye-bye. Bye.